Welcome to today's episode of the Men's Room Show. For those of you who are new to our audience, we want you to know that the Men's Room Show was created as a space for men to feel safe expressing their thoughts and emotions in a vulnerable way. It is a place where men can come to be seen, heard, and acknowledged without feeling judged or afraid to show sides of themselves that are different than society's expectations. We aim to educate, inspire, empower, and advocate. Please note that we are not licensed clinicians. We express views and opinions based on our own individual experiences. Our stories are meant to inspire others and do not replace medical advice or professional guidance. I am Linda Tilson, a men's empowerment advocate from a woman's perspective, and today I am joined by special guest Rich Carter, and he is here today to share his journey on how he became a personal development coach. I'd like to share a little bit about Rich Carter's background. And so he has been working with the Fortune 20 companies for the last 25 years, and he's gone down many avenues outside of work that have held a high level of interest for him. And in some, he was simply curious about. And in this journey, Rich has been led to find his passion in becoming a personal development coach. Today, we'll be discussing the topic of what's next, how to find your adventure. Rich, you've spent a lot of time in the corporate world. Will you share with us a little about what led you down your path?
Absolutely, Linda. And hey, I just want to, before we jump in, I just want to thank you very much for inviting me on your show, and I mean, very possibly the best title of a show, The Men's Room. Love it. And thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in the corporate world, and 4 or 5 years ago, I would not be saying this next phrase, that the corporate world is where I have learned so much, and I'm really thankful for the for what I have learned. Um, it's for a long time, I pushed against being in the corporate world. I felt that I was constrained, and I felt that there was something else out there that that should be more interesting, and that should be a more completing type of thing. So that was then. This is now, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But I've learned, as I mentioned, so much. It's where I learned how to really relate to and with people. Understanding deadlines. I was very fortunate to have a lot of travel, and that in itself, those are it's these are all things at work that I think we sometimes, I certainly took for granted for years. I learned how to present. I learned how to write really well. I learned how to convey my thoughts. And most of all, just learning how to relate to people, how to manage people. And I was able to see what a good manager or leader is, and also what a not so good leader and manager is. And I also learned, I had alluded to this a couple minutes ago, that I learned I was really good at pulling the victim card for myself as well. And we'll talk more about that.
That's interesting how you've laid that out. And so, one of the things that I thought was really important and relevant to today's conversation is to allow our listeners to hear about some of the things that you've done outside of work, those things that you're curious about, and how this exploration that you went into, how it resulted in you finding your next adventure. I think that's really important for them to hear about those thoughts that occurred, the steps that you took, and the aha moments.
For sure, for sure. So, I want to start this off with one of the best speakers I ever saw. It's a fellow named Chris Gardner, and he was actually, if you remember the movie Happiness that Will Smith starred in, he was the subject of the movie. And so he took a quote that that we all know, and then he added to it. And the quote is, "The world is your oyster." So we all kind of know that part of it. And then he added to it, "It's up to you to find the pearl." And so getting back to your question, that there I've always had and there have been gaps as I look back on, but I've always had a high curiosity for wanting to try things. And I've spent, I've gone to grad school for 3 days and dropped out because it just didn't feel right, and I tried it. Um, I became a certified scuba diver, and scuba dived, and then that wasn't necessarily what I was, what I was super interested in. I spent all of my 20s doing that type of thing, like you know, uh, uh, driving back and forth across the United States, and wintering out west and summering back on the East Coast where I'm from. Um, and then I got to a point where I wanted to start making some so I wanted to start having a consistent paycheck. So as I went into the corporate world, I was really stressed about it. Just a whole different, beige, working in a beige cube, having to dress a particular way. There were deadlines. You really had to up. I really had to up my game in that environment. And I was so stressed out that I started looking for ways, different places to go to understand maybe how I could help the stress. So I went down a path of yoga, became a certified yoga instructor, and I did that for a few years, and I decided that that wasn't really what was lighting me on fire. Um, went down a mindfulness and meditation path, and got certifications to teach in both of those. And again, they're fantastic. They were fantastic. I still do yoga and practice mindfulness and meditation, and I teach it in some places still today. Um, and that kind of led me to getting into coaching. And I ended up taking almost 3 years ago, I ended up taking a weekend experience, kind of like I did with yoga and meditation and mindfulness. And that that weekend experience, which was called the Game Changer, it literally blew my mind. And I decided coming out of that I was going to get a coach myself. And that's where things really started to turn around.
And so when you got that coach to take you to that next level of your game, what kind of coach did you seek out, and what kind of journey did they take you on? What modalities did they use? I'd be curious to hear more about that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question. So I had gotten the idea to go to the Game Changer from a good friend of mine who has been a coach for over 30 years. So I had the opportunity to speak to the person that ran the Game Changer experience. He gave me two names, and I was able to interview both of them, which, if anybody's looking for a coach, that's a good idea, because everybody approaches things a little differently. And so while I was kind of interviewing both coaches to see which one I was going to coach with, it kind of came up with the thought about the notion of becoming a personal development coach or life coach. And then the coach who comes from the Steve Chandler kind of lineage of coaching. I remember her like it was yesterday. She was saying, "Just say it, Rich. What do you want to do? What do you want to be?" And I said, "I think I want to be a life coach." And that's kind of where the journey started. I was able to jump into an apprenticeship really quickly after that, and then starting to coach people, offering to coach people at work to get some hours under my belt. And it's really pulled everything together from a standpoint of what I wanted to do, for feeling that, I can make a bigger difference than than how I felt I was making and showing up in the world previous to that.
I'm really curious to hear more about that apprenticeship model because I know there's so many different ways to become a coach. You have the traditional where you join a program, you go through all of the modules, you do have the hours that you put in to become certified. That's one. The apprenticeship meaning you could go through an apprenticeship model that's an extension to the program, but you could also choose to be apprentice in another coach's program where you could take on the sales role, coaching role, building the community role. You could do all these different things. And so I'm curious, what did the apprenticeship look like?
Fantastic. So we met once a month in between being coached 3 times a month. And you're absolutely right. There are different ways to become a coach. You can become certified, and that's going through a year-long program. I did go through a year-long apprenticeship, although it's not it's not wasn't a certification based program. You also, to be a coach, don't need to have a certification specifically. And getting a certification is not off the table for me, but I've been doing this now for 2 years, and I have gotten a ton of experience. And so monthly, and I really liked doing it with a group. There were a total of 4 of us. I've done a few things coaching based, and the group and being in a group for me is fantastic. You can just play off all of the different people really well, and everybody brings something a little different. So we actually a 13-month program. We had 12 different topics once a month, and then in between each monthly meeting or session, the group would practice whatever the topic was that we had discussed at the top of the month.
That sounds like an immersed experience, which is great. And that's a coaching model in itself is to make that space where the practice can happen. And as we're thinking about your journey, and you did the apprenticeship program, you also mentioned that you also had coaching experience that you built by being a leader in an organization. So that is coaching for performance. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is you've had that life coaching apprenticeship, you've had the corporate experience where you could coach for performance. Are there any specific principles from your corporate experience that you also apply to your personal development coaching, being that you've been through both sides of those experiences?
Yeah, so that's another great question. It took me a little bit of time. It took me some time to realize that I've always gravitated um towards other people. I love integrating with other people, connecting with other people, and then having the opportunity. And it really is it's quite a gift to be able to manage people, because there's a level of responsibility. So and the level of care that I think that I have and that I've learned to have by watching other good managers. That was something that was a really nice connection to personal development coaching. So from a standpoint of what particular um specifics, it's it I think it begins with having a base of a high level of caring, wanting to see people succeed, and fostering what those opportunities are, because each person, of course, an individual, what they're looking to achieve, and and how they're looking to grow.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that as someone who also manages people and builds teams. Um, our job as coaches, really begins where we can establish that presence with that person and connect with them in such a way that we can go into what I call the exploration journey, where we are asking those questions of appreciative inquiry. We are finding out what motivates and inspires them. And it's through that artful use of questions that we can really have a person express and voice those things. And I always say to people, when we're talking about what it is that we want to do in that next adventure, there is nothing off the table. And the
Yes.
reason why, as coaches, we say this is because we want to give a space where anything could be possible. So it's more about developing that mindset of how can we get that? How can you get that? And then the person realizing, oh, I can go do that. That's possible. Because when we uh, limit ourselves on thinking about whether it's, something, attainable, is it reasonable, is it something that's actionable, that's where you don't get to go to quite the same place than thinking about what could be. When the moment you think about what could be, you have got that person in this really amazing, and you can see this, that flow state where everything's just pouring out of them faster than the speed of light. And then that light bulb moment comes on and you can literally see it in your presence. And, being able as coaches to create that space of inspiration and of that attitude that I can go do this. I have the right to go do this. I have the support to do this. I have this coach that is with me, that is, going with me to open up and think about what can be. And here they are as someone that I can speak to that can give me some guiding, pathways maybe, of how they might do it. Because a lot of times, I'm going to put this out there, but a lot of times people think that a coaching conversation is that feel good conversation. You go and you have a coach, you think about all these great things you can do, you set up a plan and go do it. But honestly, you can disagree with me, but I think that the best coaches and the best coaching experience is one where there's something that you want to do, but you're not really sure that you can. And being able to just see it in that new light that this is for me and I can do this. And what the coach will do when they're observing is they will see that person have that block or that resistance to wanting to go do that thing. And they're going to point out to that person that that one thing that they're most afraid of or not really being open to going to, that's that one thing that they need to go explore and go do. And, a feel good experience isn't going to do that for you. And so that's where coaching is different, is that uh there's going to be that moment where you're going to say you're resisting this, you're not open. Tell me about that. And you have the conversations with clients that no one else is willing to have. So mentors don't always even do that type of conversation. A coach has the authority to go in and say those things that need to be said, and that's what people should be hiring a coach for.
Exactly. Very well said. Yeah, coaches are, can be are friendly. They're not they're not friends with their clients, so that they can hold that space. And I love asking the question, and just like you said, really, like, what's not possible. And and I, like, one of the things that I like to use, I mean, it would cost you $1 million, but like going into space, like, you can do that now. And, like, there's literally nothing that, if you want to achieve it, there's nothing that's not possible. And I think, like, that's what was such a huge connection that I was able to make when I started personal development coaching, is it allowed me to get a whole lot deeper into the conversations that I was having with the people that I was managing at work. So, it's been, for years, there was a very, it was very there were very surface level conversations that I was having. I just didn't know what that next step was. And so the personal development coaching has allowed me to be able to go a couple of steps deeper, and really concentrate on the person, really concentrate on, what do you want out of this? And it doesn't necessarily need to be about work, that, and you can, and as a manager, you can have those conversations, and it really turns the whole work idea of managing on its head, because you're like, hold on a people are like, wait, you're interested in what I want to do outside of work. And it always naturally comes back to work, but, like, to take a few minutes to to normalize a conversation about, hey, how are you, what do you want to accomplish? It's really been great to see how people take to that.
Oh, I think that they probably take really well, because I know from being on both sides of that issue that the moment you actually care about me as a person and what I do, and maybe what I am outside of work, and have an interest in that, well, then it feels more personal, and you establish that trusted, connection. So yes, it's going to come back to work. Yeah, it always does. It'll always come back to work. And I always feel inspired when someone's interested in something that I do outside of the work, because the person that I bring to work, I want to bring the authentic me. I don't want to bring, there's Linda at home, outside of work, and Linda in work. I want her to be the same person in both places. And so, you're speaking my language here, Rich. I'm always looking for ways to find out who a person truly is, and I encourage them to be that person all the time, and not to turn on and turn off the switch, because one, it's exhausting, and two, you're more effective in any work team that you're on when you can bring those similar skills, abilities, and interests, and you can find a way to tap into those on a team.
Yes.
As a leader, I'm always looking to think of a way to take that. Maybe they love public speaking, maybe they play the guitar. I mean, I have taken all kinds of different interests of people and figured out ways to put them into the team dynamic, whether it was a holiday party or maybe it was even a project. And the things that we can do, and we're connected in that way, I don't know why more leadership doesn't really do that. I think it's a triple win for everyone when you can do that.
For sure. And, I think people would be happy to do it. I don't know that there's a lot of training out there for it. Um, I've been, as we talked about in the intro, I've been in the corporate world for, 25 plus years. And I've been in one training that, um, that brushed by that type of information. It was really interesting being in the room with people that have been with the company, 30 or 40 years, managing most of that time, and the questions that they were asking, like, oh, that's okay to ask, like, to lead with. And so, just, I think people would be really open to it. And it's really great points that you're making, Linda. I wanted to mention that, I think we hear in the news, or we hear in the workplace, that there's all the quiet quitting, and all of these, people are not happy with their jobs. And it was a little bit of what I was talking about in the beginning of the podcast here, is that, it took me a long time to figure this out. There's so much that you can gain through work. And it's just like you're saying, like you were saying, like maybe somebody wants to be a better public speaker, or maybe, they want to learn how to play the guitar better. Well, they might not have guitar lessons at work, but their presence, if you give them the opportunity to be in front of people and to be leading conversations and calls and things, it's going to help their presence as they're playing the guitar on stage. There's so many things that I got out of work, and I would offer to the listeners to think about that themselves, because there's so many skills that we're learning that we're not giving its just due, to learning them. We kind of fight in our minds over it, and then we don't get as much out of it as we very possibly could.
That's true. We as coaches, our guiding principle really for the people that we're working with is take charge of your life, take
Yeah.
charge of your career, take charge
Yes.
of everything, and be that driver. And you can go in and out of the lanes, you can speed up to slow down, but as long as you're in that driver's seat, you are commanding that vehicle of what direction it's going to go, what direction it's not going to go. And when you can do that, and you can take that principle and put it to anything that you do, you're right. Anything that you use outside of work can definitely be applied to work. And the same thing is true in reverse. Things in work, and you can apply it to daily living.
Yes.
And so I really love that. And this kind of takes us to the point that I wanted to bring up, because I think it's so important in the coaching world. And I believe that coaches need coaches, and that coaches should not be put on a pedestal, because we, at the end of the day, are humans. And
For sure.
so we may have gone down a path, and so we're further along in development in something, but there are other areas that maybe we're still developing. And I think that, one of the things that I thought would be helpful in our interview today is to talk about what one of your biggest challenges or obstacles was in the process of transitioning from the corporate to your interest and passion for helping people in the personal development coaching space.
Wow. Great question, Linda. And just like you said, like I don't know any coach, and I've been able to meet a lot of coaches over the last few years that don't have a coach themselves. So as a coach, you know, you're constantly learning. If you're staying in the space of coaching, you're constantly learning. And and so then to get to your question, um the 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 catalyst for me was that game changer experience. And we didn't do this ahead of time, but you hit it right on the head, like that. So the catalyst for me, and kind of what you just said, is I was pulling the victim card on myself. Oh, woe is me. It's work's fault. It's that I'm not having these euphoric feelings, blah 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 blah. And the phrase that just was like a lightning bolt that hit me, was, we are 100% responsible for ourselves. So it's just like you said. It's one of my favorite coaching lines, quotes, guidelines, is that, and I say it to myself quite a bit. So if I, start to go below the line in thinking about something or talking about something, you know, the only thing that I can do anything about is myself. I can't do anything about another person, how they react to things. I can't do anything about a situation. It's never the situation, it's how we react to the situation. And it's how I react to the situation. So I can control that. I can't control anything else. So it's just exactly as you said, kind of leading into this with the question. My big change was realizing that I am 100% responsible for myself. And that if I want something to happen, just like you said, I need to make that happen. Simple as that. And I may not know what that is, but I can start moving in that direction. I can have the intention of creating what I want to create. It doesn't mean that, like, the old, Rome was Rome built in how many days? The, the, you don't have to have a specific, you don't have to have a specific plan in place. Hey, if you do, great, but you just start moving in a direction where you're interested or where you're curious.
Absolutely. Well said. Taking charge of your own journey and not hanging out in that victim place, and knowing that only you can make those changes. And
Yes.
it's really easy for us as coaches to say this, because we've had to go through this own journey. I'm sure that we've all been through the victim where you're thinking, I'm not good enough, or my uh, employer's not helping me enough, or all these different things. That's very true. And so that's what helps us as coaches, is having gone down that path, finding and taking action steps to move our mindset muscle, to uh the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. And by having that resiliency build, it's something that we can use in our toolkit when we see somebody that might be in that space where they're in that victim mode, or they're not in the place where they're not taking, or they are in the place where they're not taking charge. And so we can point to it and kindly, but yet challenge them to think and see things and do things differently. And that's the power of coaching. And
Yes.
during this journey, what would someone who knows you really well would say is the one thing that you're most proud of during this experience that you've gone down? So that could be your wife, your kids, a good friend. What would they
So,
say?
so I think, they would say, and I would say that as well. That, and I don't know that I realized it at the time, but that I just haven't given up. Like, I've certainly, it hasn't been like, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days for, many years. Like, there were gaps, but I was always, I said many times to myself that I wasn't necessarily feeling complete with what I was doing, where I was in life. And I would say to myself, I'm going to keep searching for that answer, whatever it is. And, I would like, everybody to think about, and this was another one of the, like, really big things that my coach helped me to see, is that no matter what we do in the past, it helps set us up for where we are in the future. So I used to think, like, okay, oh boy, I went to, I got a yoga certification, and I decided not to use it, or I got this certification, or I what else did I read these books, and I'm like, oh boy, they didn't necessarily help me then. But then you fast forward a number of years, you look back, and those things are experiences that you can take to help other people, to help yourself. And that's really the adventure that you've created for yourself. If you look back, it's really quite a remarkable path that not only me, but everybody has taken. All of the different experiences, all of the places you've lived or moved, or jobs, places you've been. It's really quite it's really quite remarkable. I also like to, I'll ask people, I'm like, have you looked in the pictures in your phone lately? And like nothing but smiles. Because I'm sure there are some, can be some trying things that in pictures. Most people look back, you'll see them look, and there's just big smiles, like all of the things that we've accomplished that we don't really think about. We're always thinking about kind of what's next. Okay, I don't feel like I have to get the next thing or I have to read the next thing. Looking back for how we got to where we are today is really, really a special opportunity.
I like everything that you are like laying out here. It's like putting a little seed in my mind as I'm listening to you speak. And the thing that came to surface as you were talking was the fact that you could explore and try something, and it may not be something that sticks and you want to keep with, and then you try another thing. And a lot of times you might try something and feel like, oh, I got to keep this going. I invested this time, energy, money into this thing, and I need to keep it going. But knowing when to explore and not feeling in alignment and just saying, okay, well, I gave it my shot. I tried, or this thing wasn't really what I thought it was. I'm going to do something different now. Because, a lot of times people think that it's too late to start a new thing,
Yes.
or the moment has passed, they can't do it. And really, when you think about what's next, you don't always have to be like trying to ratchet it up to the next level. However, if you're interested and curious to explore something, the next level thinking becomes important when you got to get started and just take a shot and see where it leads. And because when you take that shot, you might just totally surprise yourself. And so and so I always want people to know that next level thinking is not necessarily the whole entire hierarchy as you would be led to believe. It's more about what's the next step for that thing that you want to actualize.
Exactly. And just as you said that so well, Linda, even if we do something and it doesn't come to fruition, there's a ton of learning in that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, I wanted to learn how to weave baskets, and I decided that it's not really for me. Okay, so I'm not gonna, I learned that that's not. I'm sure I learned how to weave a basket, but I learned that that's not a direction that I necessarily want to go in, and maybe it's just something I don't want to do right now. And then I'm pivoting and looking for something else. So yeah, just so well said.
Thank you. So, we've been talking an awful lot about new adventures and areas of personal development that a person could explore. So, I can't not have this interview where I ask you, what are you currently exploring? Where are you hoping to develop in your journey that you're in right now?
So yeah, so thanks for that. Another good question. Yeah, I am so excited about coaching and learning more about coaching. So I've enrolled in a 6 month in another 6 month coaching school. I thank you very much for inviting me onto your podcast. Like I'm wanting to get the word out. I'm doing a number of workshops at my full-time job that are based around coaching, and I'm looking to grow my coaching practice as well. So it's full, and it's good. There were times, a handful of years ago where, weekend would come, and I'd be doing a lot of laying on the couch, like kind of thinking, so what am I gonna do next? And so I'm I'm all in on coaching, and that's my focus. That and learning and connecting with people, and really serving, because that's at the basis of uh of the coaching. I think we'll talk about maybe some of the resources and at the end here, and that's the basis of the coaching, is just being able to serve people and help people find find their passion and find their intention in the world.
Yes. And earlier, you planted a seed here as well, but you talked about if you're wanting to go into an area of personal development, go on to that next adventure, that the best way is to interview coaches that you would like to work with to see if they're a good fit in style, personality, and the modalities they use. What else would you suggest that some activities that they could take as they're looking for that coach, or even steps they might need to take for how to get into that next adventure, next level way of thinking?
Sure, it's a great segue, Linda. So, um, I've broken it down into a few steps, and so there's no rush. That you want to have some, you want to be thoughtful about this, and you also don't want the thoughtfulness to slow you down any. But if you don't have any idea at all,
Mhm.
spending some quiet time by yourself. Now, I'm not talking about in a dark room or in a cave for days at a time. You know, spend 30 minutes without the radio on, without your phone in the same room, without the TV on, and you can journal or you can meditate or even just sitting alone and thinking, saying to yourself, so what do I want to do? And not adding any pressure. The other, if you have an idea, as these ideas start to pop up, there's a three-step thing that I've come up for myself, is that decide kind of what direction you want to go in. It doesn't necessarily have to be specific. Commit to do it to something, and then move. And the move part seems to be the hardest, because we're always waiting for the right time. I certainly did that quite a bit myself. We're always waiting for the right time, the right circumstance. There's never going to be the right time or the right circumstance. So moving down that path and starting to experience. And just as Linda said so well, that hey, if it's something that you decide you don't like, then do something else. Stop and do something else. That's how we learn. I think along, people are afraid to, oh my gosh, well, maybe it's not going to work out. N- You know, not a lot of things really do fully work out, in a straight line. There's always zigzagging going on. And yeah, and do not, and don't wait. You don't have to wait. Decide, commit, and move.
Wow. You heard from Rich. Decide, commit, move. Those are three actionable steps. They're easy to remember. They are easy to execute
Yeah.
if you're willing to go there. That it's that simple. And
Yeah.
this is the beauty in coaching models and things that we do to inspire us to take an action, because I'm going to incorporate this, actually. Decide, commit, move. I can share that with anyone that I'm speaking with. We're
Yeah.
making a decision today. We're going to commit to do XYZ. And by the way, we're going to move on that today.
Yeah,
So,
exactly,
uh,
exactly. And and a coach, as you had said a few minutes ago, Linda, like this is where a coach is so helpful. It's not that they're going to do it for you, but there's going to be this really high level of support and assistance when you have when the questions invariably come up that, oh my gosh, well, can I do this? A coach might say, well, why can't you do it? Or what's holding you back from doing it? And I think you very quickly see, you're like, yeah, why am I, why am I not moving forward with this? So, and and as Linda said, you can find coaches really anywhere. I shouldn't say anywhere, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we come to the end here. But make sure that you're not just signing up. Make sure that you're comfortable. Make sure that that you feel that you are connecting with a coach. It's just like anything. It's just like going to a gym that you like better than another. It's like going to a hairstylist, whatever. Just like you have people that you connect with, and there are people out there that you don't necessarily connect with.
Wow, yes. That's very true, because if we're not connected and feeling in alignment, we may not always feel like it's the time to start, because there's always, like you said, never a good time. But if you don't have that connection and that alignment of where you want to go with that coach, no amount of anyone else outside of you is going to get you to go there truly, unless you have that. And so I think that's an important point to make as you are meeting with coaches and asking them good questions. It's just like you're doing a job interview. It's just like when you're dating, you got to find that fit. And because with the absence of fit, you're just really not going to move the needle. You're not going to be inspired to show up to have the sessions. So you got to have that. And another thing, they're not a miracle worker. Your coach is not a miracle worker. They're not going to be a consultant and tell you how to do it, because consultants will tell you the how. And they're not going to be your best friend, is what you had said. So they're going to talk to the tough stuff. They're going to be that little challenging nudge, but yet at the same time, they will, be compassionate when we got to pick up the pieces to move something in a different way because it didn't feel right. Um, all of these are great things that you're bringing up today. And I wanted to share with our listeners, if you would like to reach out to Rich to discuss your next adventure, to work with him as a coach, he can be reached at Rich Carter Coding or coaching, sorry, richcartercoaching.com. And some resources that he shared today, I will drop in the channel. And so I really love all of these. Overcoming Underearning by Barbara Stanny. Going Pro with Stephen Pressfield. Big Magic with Elizabeth Gilbert. And one of my favorites as well, The Prosperous Coach by Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin. All of these are great books on coaching, life-changing game planning, and more. And I'm going to include those. And I just really want to thank Rich for coming on the Men's Room Show today to walk us through how he found his next adventure. And he took the steps to find out what could be next, which is why we're having this conversation today. We want everyone that may be going through that exploration, whether they're just starting out, or maybe they're midway through, or maybe they want to do that next thing before as they're part of their retirement plan. I mean, there's all stages and seasons of life. And so we put that on the table for our discussion. I'd also like to invite people that would like to interview with us on the Men's Room Show to go ahead and send an email to today'sempoweredmen@gmail.com. And if you're not the person that wants to become the guest, but you know someone that is, referring to us. I would love to sit down and have a discussion of what it would be like to come onto the Men's Room Show. And again, the whole idea behind this show is really to advocate and inspire, to discuss men's issues. Ultimately, we're going to be talking about human issues, because I come into the discussion as a woman's perspective on all of the issues that we speak to. So really it's about the human issues, but this is the format and modality that I choose to go down. And with that, do you have any, I guess, last words of inspiration or encouragement about taking that decision to commit and move to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. Just one quick thing, a couple quick things. So, Linda, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. Was really great. Really appreciated, enjoyed the conversation with you. Um, as Linda mentioned, if you'd like to get in touch with me, richcartercoaching.com. And I always gift the first 2 sessions, so there's no strings attached. It's a good way to have an a couple of alignment conversations. So just want you to know that. And then the last thing, we are 100% responsible for ourselves. So, light that fuse and keep moving.
Yes, keep moving, and we will see you on the next episode of the Men's Room Show.